And then we did a reboot, which never got made, a primetime version of Life with Derek with CTV. We wrote scripts for this show.
The Quinn Marr Show.
My next guest is a writer and producer behind some of the most iconic and hilarious shows to ever hit our screens. He gave us Life with Derek, The Ultimate Guide to Sibling Warfare, and Overruled, proof that teen court should absolutely be a real thing, along with countless other hit series that shaped a generation of Canadian TV. His sharp writing, quick wit, and knack for creating unforgettable characters have made him one of the most influential voices in family comedy. It is my pleasure to welcome to the Quinn Marr Show, Jeff Biederman. Jeff, how is it going? And thank you so much for joining me.
Quinn, fantastic intro. No notes, Quinn. Excellent. It's going great. So nice to talk to you.
I'm so excited to have you on here. So what I normally like to do with my guests is go literally right back to the beginning of their lives and then come up to where we are now. So for you, growing up in Toronto in like the early 70s, what was like a 70s, 80s Toronto like for you?
It was very typical suburban Toronto. Lots of hockey night in Canada, and lots of 70s sitcoms and a lot of reruns. And my first television experience was watching Happy Days reruns in the basement while playing hockey at the same time. So yes, very Canadian.
I love that.
I love that.
And I know you're a Leafs guy and you're a Jays guy, and we'll definitely get into them later. But it's funny because like a lot of my guests started in either acting or music, but you obviously with writing and producing the background. How do you get there? Like when you're younger, you're watching these reruns of shows, you're watching all these sitcoms. Is that where the love started of just entertainment, I guess?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know how people today, they have things called comfort shows, and there was no term for that back then. And I found the rhythms, the style of multi-camera American sitcoms sort of very comforting. The sounds, the rhythms. It's kind of like pop music. Some people are really into pop music, and there's better pop music than other pop music. That's kind of how I felt about sitcoms. And again, because it was the 70s, it was the 80s, we didn't have a billion channels and we didn't have a billion shows. And so you would see the same ones over and over again. And again, I just found that style of show, that pattern really sort of appealed to me. I had no acting aspirations. Comedy was a big part of growing up, SCTV, and was a big part of my household. Monty Python, that was all those kind of comedies were a big part of my upbringing, and seeing everyone kind of gather around and laugh. And then as I got older, getting my first laughs, I knew that comedy was something that I was attracted to. But I've seen over the years, you really have to have stage presence, and the camera really has to like you, and you really have to want to do it. I had none of those things. I tried stand-up in my early 20s, and again, have a lot of admiration for that art form, but I don't like the camera on me. I like to be the one in the back of, or the middle of the class, cracking wise. And so I had no idea what TV writing was. I had no idea that there were writers. So it was sort of a long, and then I just went, along the regular path that most suburban kids did. I went to university while all my friends were sort of finding careers and paths. I was like, I don't like any of this. And again, I wasn't much of a reader. I was a TV watcher. And in the 90s, when Seinfeld sort of became quite big, and Friends and those kinds of shows, I was in my 20s at the exact kind of right time when I was like, oh, okay, you could be sarcastic and funny. And it kind of connected for me, and it kind of went from there. That's sort of the style of comedy at the time matched my interests, I would say.
I like that you brought up the sarcastic thing, because me going through your Instagram when I first tried to get asked you to come on here, like the way
Yes.
you would and I know it's just your friends you were replying to, but some of the comments when you replied to, you can get the sarcastic tone just from your comments.
Yes, I was born sarcastic, and it's just, yes, maybe it's a defense mechanism, I don't know, but that to me, I always see it as, I saw it as a sign of of intelligence. But again, it's the idea that you could take something and have an attitude towards it. Some would call it judgmental. But again, always assessing things like writers do. So I think it's just part of my style. And again, if you watch any of my shows, it's a lot of sarcasm in a lot of the characters. Absolutely.
I wish my teachers thought of it the same way when I was growing up, when I was being a sarcastic, wise ass in the back to class.
Yes. Well, now that I do some teaching, I actually appreciate the sarcasm.
Yeah.
I encourage it. I see it as a sign of intelligence. So I always say, yes, you don't have to. You shouldn't be liking all the things you're learning in school at face value. You should have an attitude towards a lot of these things and a lot of things in the world. So yes.
Absolutely. I'd watched that 20th anniversary live stream of Life with Erica a couple months
Oh
ago.
yeah.
And obviously you were on there and you were talking about like how you grew up with a bunch of siblings. So are any of your siblings in the entertainment business? Or are they like way completely opposite of any of this?
Well, I grew up in a big family. I have an older brother who's like 3 years older than me and three younger sisters who are sort of 10, 11 years younger. It's like a separate kind of generation. My parents like kids. What can I tell you? And not birth control, apparently. So anyway, my sisters are younger. No, my brother is a doctor. I have a sister is a teacher. A sister is in sort of social work. But I do have one sister who is my sister Beth is an editor. But very much on her own path, and I think she's just graduating from the Film Center editing program, so doing great stuff. But I can't take credit for any of that. There is no nepotism here. She's doing it all on her own. But yeah, I guess I'm not shocked that she's in the business, but very different path. And yeah, nobody else is a writer, and yeah, I had no connections to anything. Kind of just did this all on my own.
Then were your parents kind of the same too? Like they were like, couldn't be further from entertainment, like when you were growing up
Yes.
career-wise?
Yes. No, my dad's was a psychology professor at U of T. And my mother was a social worker. And no, put it this way. It's a good thing my brother became a doctor because they had that taken care of. And there was less sort of pressure on me to fulfill that Semitic dream. I was able to sort of carve my own path and sort of take my time and got very lucky that, the Canadian industry at the time when I just was starting, there was this boom of youth comedy, which, I was a big part of. Right place, right time. It's a big part of comedy. It's a big part of life. And I was very lucky. So, 5 years earlier, my life would have been very different. And I think 5 years later, my life would have been different. It was a very, very good time and got very lucky.
Oh, no, absolutely. Then you mentioned about going to university. So you went to McGill and Ryerson. Why
Yes.
universities? Did you go for I'm assuming you went for different programs. That's why?
Yeah, I did. All right. I guess my degree from McGill is in philosophy with a minor in English. I know absolutely nothing about philosophy. I know a little bit about English. I speak it, but was able to get a degree. I just wanted the college experience. I wanted to move out of my house. I thought there'd be a new conglomerate of girls that had not heard my 4 jokes from my high school. It turns out a lot of people from my high school ended up going to McGill in Canada. There's not many places to go. There's like 4, right? So I really enjoyed my time at McGill. I actually did 3 years there. I finished my degree as a visiting student, strangely, at U of T, where I was like, okay, I didn't like anything in school at McGill. Let's do something different here. I was like in the musical. I was like, it wasn't for me, but I did sort of realize that something artistic was going to be important in my life, that a traditional path wasn't the way to go. I found someone had mentioned this program at Ryerson. At the time it was called Ryerson, and now it's called TMU or whatever. They had a radio and television program for university graduates. It was a new program. It was a 2-year program. And I thought, wow, this is going to change my life. I'm going to be in a class full of everyone wants to write sitcoms and everyone's going to be just like me. And nobody was. They were great people, but it was much more production oriented. And I didn't care about anything. I, to this day, know very little about cameras. I know how to oversee all these things, and I know the importance of editing, and I know how to supervise that stuff. But technically, I don't know anything. So, and I don't pretend to, which is, that's my piece of it, but don't lie about what you know. I don't. So I hated that program. I hated that experience altogether at the time. But what it did do was I met people, and I had a great professor there. He was actually a guest lecturer who was just in for like a couple of classes, and his name was Jim Corsten. And I was doing some presentation, probably being sarcastic about it, and he was like, "I like you. I don't know why." He's like, "When you graduate, I get you a job," and he got me a job as a driver on a preschool series called Naughty, which yeah, and I was like, I'm a writer. You can't, I'm not gonna, and thank God I said yes. And I actually learned the importance as a writer of knowing what production is like, knowing the business, knowing the factory, knowing what all the roles were, what everyone does, what a key grip is, what, I don't know. I was like, I didn't know what these things were. So it was a great experience. It was sort of my foot in the door in kids TV. And I saw that this was just starting to be a thing, and that they had writers, and that the writers mostly were not on set. They got to be at home while everyone else is working crazy hours and not seeing their families. The writers seemed to be having a cushier lifestyle for the most part. A lot of the freelance was. I was like, I want that life.
Yeah, can I stay home, please? I like this.
Yeah, especially in Canada in the winter. I mean,
I was going to say a day like today where it's been a blizzard all day.
Brutal. Little did I know that if you really want to be in the thick of it, you really want to have some influence on a show, you really do have to be on the set. You have to be in the room. You have to be part of it. While a freelance writing lifestyle is nice, you got to get dressed and go to work, regardless of what you're doing. But that's sort of where I got my start. Yeah. So after school, I got a job as a driver on a preschool series. Then from there, I interviewed for a job as a script coordinator, I guess. It was actually a producer's assistant on a new Disney Channel series that was shooting in Toronto. It was a co-production, I guess, with Alliance Atlantis, which was a company at the time. And it was like this, it was a big deal. And the producers were like these real American producers. And I interviewed for the job, and they asked me, you see, whatever, do you know how to use Final Draft? And Final Draft is like this writing software program that I still use. And I'm like all arrogant and thinking, no, I don't know how to use it, but I'll figure it out. I didn't get the job. 6 months later, when I wasn't doing anything, they called me back and they said, "You dummy, we had to fire the person who we hired because they knew how to use the program. Learn the program and we'll hire you." So
Wow.
I did. It turns out my bosses on that show were one was Bruce Kalish, and Bruce was a very successful Hollywood screenwriter. His parents, Austin and Irma Kalish. Irma was one of the writers on All the Family, Good Times. His dad was also a successful writer in the business. So he was Hollywood sort of royalty. Bruce had written, The Fall Guy. He'd written on Mork and Mindy, all these classic shows that I knew and loved. So Bruce was kind of an intimidating, oh my God, he's a real Hollywood writer. I'm this sarcastic Canadian kid. Although my parents are from the U.S. and I had dual citizenship. So I always had an American sort of affinity. I loved all that stuff, observed it and loved all of it. Anyway, my other boss, the other producer, was this young Hollywood hotshot who was probably maybe 1 or 2 years older than me, and I was his assistant. And he was just sort of starting his directing or show running career. And that guy was Sean Levy. Right. Yes.
Uh-huh.
So Sean, anyone, for your thousands of viewers, millions of viewers, Google Sean. Sean, put it this way, he's currently directing the new Star Wars, right?
Just finished Stranger Things after 10 years.
Right. And so the combination of having my two bosses were Bruce Kalish, this industry veteran, and Sean, who was the most enthusiastic person in the room, the most generous person in the room. And in a weird way, like as much as he was so Hollywood, and he wasn't full of shit, he loved everything about this. He treated episode 23 of season 4 of Jett Jackson the same way he treated like this screenplay that came in that he's going to work with Paul Giamatti. Like he just loved the business and loved the people in it and loved being part of it. And that was kind of like, oh my God, this is like, I'm learning from basically the best. I was a shitty assistant. I was scared of dogs at the time. I had to walk his dog. They were putting me through the ringer. One day they basically said, you know, you're a shitty assistant. What do you want to do? I said, I want to be a writer. They said, well, what have you written? And literally in my desk, I had a Friends spec script. Maybe I had a Spin City spec script, something else. Anyway, I had a few half-hour comedy spec scripts. I didn't have any teen genre because that wasn't a big deal at the time. So, you know, I was writing, trying to imitate American shows. And they read it, and Bruce, you know, who was much more of the writer, he said, you know, this is fine. Like it's, you know, it reads like a script, and we really like you, and you seem smart. And within like 3 or 4 months, I was co-writing an episode with Bruce of the Famous Jett Jackson, which again, like, yeah, that's why I always
sorry to cut you off. I was going to say,
Yeah.
and for those who don't know, the show's about a superstar who just wanted a normal life. And that sounds familiar. That sounds like Hannah Montana, which it wasn't. It was about a kid that was on a TV show, an action show called Silverstone. And then he wanted the normal life. So he asked him, hey, like, can you guys like come to my hometown and just shoot it there so I can still go to school every day? So
Yes,
the Famous Jett Jackson it was like one of the, I think the first original live action shows after Flash Forward. So like it really was up there for one of the first. So it was
the first. It was right before all those Hannah Montanas and even for Nickelodeon, their iCarlys, like where the real big explosion happened. Now, there was a bunch of shows before, and they were all quite good, but there wasn't one kind of tone that they all kind of stuck to. So Famous Jett Jackson was very ambitious. It was probably one of the biggest budget shows I've ever worked on to this day. You know, we were doing 3 days on location and 2 days in the studio, and there was huge budgets. Like it was crazy. And my first day, and again, I was, you know, I was jumping in on a moving train. They were already done like a season, and then it was like halfway through second season that I was brought on as an assistant. My first day of work, Britney Spears was a guest star on the show.
What?
So yes, this was before she had really broken, and Disney was trying to make these stars into stars. So Britney Spears was on. Like apparently she was lovely. I didn't meet her. I was in the same building. Destiny's Child before Beyonce, they were on the show. I had lunch with Beyonce and all the other Destiny's children. They were lovely right before. They were very young, and Usher was on the show. Like Disney wanted, this was a way to promote their stars on this Canadian. Well, at the time the dollar was quite weak, and so they were shooting these big budget shows because it was cheaper here. And so it wasn't strictly a comedy, and I wasn't really an action guy, but like writing was writing. I was telling stories. I was learning the process. I was learning the importance of writing to fit into production. Anybody could write a script. Even you, Quinn, you could write a script.
I appreciate that.
Having known you for 14 minutes, I can see there's some real talent there, the subtext. But based on that, the sign alone, it seems it's well.
Thank you. My friends got it made for me.
Fantastic.
I appreciate it.
But learning how to write to production, that's what really separates people. And it's very hard to get that experience. It's kind of a catch-22. You can't learn how to write production unless you work in production. So I always tell anyone, and even I think 25 years into this stupid career, it still holds true. If you can ever get a job, again, easier said than done, but if you could ever get a job in production, you could afford that sort of lifestyle to, like, you know, you work 3 months, you're off for 3 months. If you know, it's hard to find work. If you can get a job in production, if you can get a job working with producers, you got to go where the people are making the stuff, not just writing the stuff. Anybody can write, but it's knowing the right people and the right timing and knowing what they're looking for, and knowing what works on camera, and knowing how to write for different voices, all that stuff. I had a huge crash course. And again, working with great, hugely talented people who kind of were, again, Sean's a great example. Like, there was no sarcasm. It was, this is really hard, but if you love it and you work hard, you could do this. And Sean was instrumental in getting me an agent, the same agencies in Canada that were like, we're not taking you on. You've written a Friends spec script and you worked on a weird preschool show. And then Sean said, take this guy. And that was it. So you need people, you need a barking dog, but you need people to help.
No, absolutely, and it's cool
question.
that you talked about like the show Naughty, which again that's preschool, and then you went into Jett Jackson, which is a teen show. While you're in like Jett Jackson, at this point, are you thinking, "Okay, maybe like teen shows are my thing," or did you still have no idea?
I wish I could say I had the ambition, not the ambition, the I could look into the future and see, oh, this is what's going to be. And I will, Sean at the time said, hey, listen, after the show wraps, I'm going back to LA. I'm about to direct my first big feature called Big Fat Liar with Frankie Muniz and Paul Giamatti. Come and be my assistant. I'm thinking of starting a company. And I'm like, well, first of all, I was intimidated because it's Sean Levy, even though like we were friends. And it's just like we had different personalities. He wasn't that kind of comedy guy at the time, although he's ended up making so many family comedies. He just was, I was like, I got to do my own thing. That was part of it. And also I was intimidated, but more importantly, I was getting work here. and I, it's kind of like the philosophy of don't mess with happy. I was happy. I was like, okay, right after Jett Jackson, I started to get kind of more freelance work. I started to get animated jobs, even though I wasn't this big animation fan. There was opportunities in writing for shows like Totally Spies. And then these shows started to pop up. And then I take these meetings with these companies and they're thinking, hey, we're thinking of developing these comedy series. There was still no primetime comedy here. And I kind of saw that being an emerging fish in a small pond, there was some value to that. There weren't a lot of me's. I was a young, at the time, American style writer who knew how to imitate Sean and Bruce in meetings at that time and be like, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do. And I was really kind of assertive. And I thought, let's play this out for a while. And cut to, I don't know, Jett Jackson wrapped in 2001. I didn't stop working in teen television. It could have been almost 10 years, right? It didn't stop. It was just a right place at right time. And we could, not to ruin the ending. The ending is it's unfortunate that those shows, they don't make as many here anymore. But I think that I've seen these things come back and cycles return, and forget about reboots. I think it's a genre that I think it will return, and on many reasons it should. But anyway, yeah. So I didn't know there was going to be this big teen boom of television. And it really helped that there was a family channel and a YTV and having all these places and having people like you who, and much the same way I did when I was growing up. I didn't know that these sitcoms, I didn't know they were made in LA and there weren't many made in, I watched Polka Dot Door and I didn't care that it was made in Toronto. Like I didn't think of it that way. But the fact that these shows were made here and we had local actors that we could admire, and that there was sort of it's like we had our own league. We had our own TV, and I think that was really important for a generation of young people. At the time I didn't really think of it that way, but again, it was nice that we had our own bunch. We had our own shows that were always considered a little bit different than American shows, just a little bit weirder. The lighting's a little bit different. Some would say cheaper, but there was a certain charm to it. There was a certain genuine quality to, I think, a lot of what we did. But yeah, I had no idea it was going to be this big.
It's funny that you mentioned about like the YTVs and family channels, because me in my life and me and my friends, there was 3 channels in our blinders on: Family Channel, YTV, Teletoon. That obviously when I was younger was Treehouse, but mainly it was those 3. And it's cool because you literally worked on shows for all 3 of them, so that is really cool. Also, I was gonna say, you're talking about cameos and guest appearances on the Famous Jett Jackson. One that I found that I didn't know about as well to add to your list was Rachel McAdams for one episode.
Absolutely, yes. I always say that I was instrumental in her career. She doesn't know this, but I remember watching casting tapes for this role. I think the role was it was like a bulimic sister. We were tackling some serious issues.
Yep.
Yeah, again, not my style, but anyway, I'm not against it. But anyway, so not that we thought she looked the most bulimic, she did not, but she clearly her cat. I mean, it's very hard these casting tapes, and this was like a self tape. I think she was a student at York at the time. It was like, first of all, she was beautiful, and second of all, she was like, it's just like it. It was the least amount of arguing I ever saw in the room. It's like, yeah, no, it's her. And I think they brought me in just to be like, what do you think of her? I'm like, oh my god, you better cast her. I mean, it was just like you knew right away, and she delivered an amazing performance. So it's
And literally 3
yeah.
years later, in the same year, The Notebook and Mean Girls came out in the same year, and then she blew up. That was it.
It's not it again. It's
Crazy.
I'm not surprised.
Then there was the movie, the Jett Jackson, the movie where he decides that like, hey, he doesn't want to do it anymore. He ends it. It's the last episode, or whatever. He hits his head, and then he's Silverstone, and he's stuck in this world. But you weren't a part of that. At least you're not credited anywhere. What was the reason for that?
I worked on the production of it. I helped Bruce. I think I was his assistant on the movie. I think a lot of those were, well, first of all, it wasn't my show. Bruce and Sean were the showrunners. So they don't need another writer. They're just writing the movie. And again, back then it was probably part of Bruce's, back then these showrunners had great deals. We'll pay you this much for the series, and then at the end there'll be a movie. That was a very TV thing to do. And so I worked on the production. It was a great experience. And I was like, oh, okay, you make a big series, and then at the end of it, you make a movie. That's great. I can't wait to do that one day with my own show. Like, I just thought that was sort of the normal part of it. But I worked on it. We shot it in the same facility. I remember reading the script and giving some feedback. And again, Bruce, he didn't need my input. He knew what he was doing. But yeah, it's Lee Thompson Young was a wonderful actor, and he's no longer with us, which is very, very sad. Like, but I mean, this kid was a star, handsome and actually he wrote an episode as well. This was before like actors were really doing that. And he had help obviously, but he took it very seriously. He was a very smart kid. This was not some vain actor, and I think it's something I've observed over the years. The successful actors, it's not always the most talented, it's the smart ones. It's the sarcastic ones.
Like, he was found for the show on I think it was a Robitussin commercial, but like to me he did really have like that look. Like he was cool. Like everyone's like, oh, Jett Jackson is a cool guy. So yeah,
it's very hard to play, especially at that age when you're a teenager. Like teenagers don't want to look like an idiot.
Yes.
And imagine being like, you're going to be cool now. Before your time, Henry Winkler was playing Fonzie. This was like he was probably a Jewish guy in his 30s playing an Italian, the coolest Italian teenager, but he was an amazing actor. He didn't he was acting cool. So his character was way cooler than he was. Obviously. And so for a teenager to do that, took a lot of guts. And again, he was just a great person. It was not, again, I can't say we were close friends or anything like that, but like, we were on set together for 3 years. You knew he was going to be successful. Again, I didn't know, you obviously didn't know he was struggling with anything, but sorry, I'm listening to you, Quinn. I'm not. Yeah, there you go. Sorry about this. Apologize. No, you can edit this out.
You're good.
Yeah, but so Lee was a great kid, a very smart kid, and yes, a sad ending. At the time, he seemed like he was enjoying his childhood at least, and again, writing episodes. I don't know if he directed as well, but anyway, I think he went on to direct maybe. But yeah, super talented. So I'm trying to think any other guest stars we would have had.
That's crazy that there are that many big ones. I didn't realize that. Not remembering obviously from when I was a kid, and I always liked how like the movie served as like a wrap up for the series. I always thought that was cool.
Yes. This was the thing. They got to go back to that. Yes, everyone wants to see the movie. It's like you see your TV star in just different lighting and fancier clothes. That's kind of what it is.
Oh, that's funny that you say that because when you say that, one show that makes me think about that is Good Luck Charlie. I remember watching it in like grade 7, grade 8. They had their show, and then they had Good Luck Charlie. It's Christmas, and my wife and I were just talking about this the other day because we rewatched it because we like that movie. And it was like it's so weird seeing these characters on what you think is the same set, just like the camera angles are different. It's different lighting. Like it's just like it looks so weird.
Well, I'll put it this way: of all the shows I worked on, we could, Jett Jackson was the only one that was like, if you walked onto that set, you'd be like, this feels like a movie. This is a huge, elaborate production. And every other strictly Canadian production, some of them were more successful. You were like, wait, you shoot it here? This looks like a school project. It's like it was not glamorous. It was shot in like a crappy warehouse. First season of Life with Derek, we shot in Newfoundland in a hockey arena. For it's like, this isn't showbiz. This show's gonna go nowhere. What are we doing? This is embarrassing. It all goes to show you never know. But yeah, no, that was really one of my only tastes of Hollywood in Toronto. That was a really big eye opener. I think for me, what was good about it was like I never was intimidated again. Nothing was going to be, if I could, when the Disney Channel execs, I remember working with Sean, and like 2 weeks into the show, he's like, do you have any ideas for series? Because I'm developing stuff with Disney. And I'm like, wait, you're asking me if I have any show ideas? And I'm like, yeah, I got an idea. And I'm like, I don't have any ideas. I went home like, okay, things are like, and I had this idea about this kid who he's too smart. He skips like 15 grades. He goes to medical school when he's like 12 and he graduates, but he has all these student loans he has to pay off. So he has to go back to his junior high and teach there. And the show is called Teach His Own. And Sean's called, that's a great idea. That's a great title. Let's pitch it. I'm like, what are you talking about? And like the next day, we're on the phone with Disney in Hollywood and we're pitching this series. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get my own show. Like I've been in Hollywood. I haven't moved. I'm literally in Toronto. And it's like the pitch went really well, and they were like, "Oh, this is a great idea. We have something similar that's in development. I think it was called Smart Guy, which was about a guy." Yeah. So anyway, I was like, "Okay, well, but like that was my first pitch. That's this business is easy." So I had no idea. But again, back to you have to be there. You have to be in front of these people, and you have to be around people who are just kind of Hollywood about it. They're like, this is a business, but if you treat it right, you do the work, you're super, and it's sort of a given that you're talented. It's a given that you know how to talk to people and be appropriate on set and all those things and behave and show up to work on time, all that kind of stuff that, you sort of take for granted. That's a given, but the rest is like, no, right place, right time, and don't be an idiot.
Absolutely. And I think hanging out with people that are at that time were more successful than you, knew more than you. Those are the people you want to hang out with. You don't want to hang out with people that you know more about because you're not going to go anywhere with that.
Right. Yes. So I learned.
Yeah.
Good crash course.
Yeah, exactly. You were thrown in the deep end. You're talking about other things that you were on, like kind of like freelancing or just like other things you wrote on. There was Radio Free Roscoe, Martin Mystery, and then there were Strange Days at Blake Holsley High, which is a mouthful of a title. What?
Well, you know why it's called that?
Why?
So the show was actually called Black Hole High, and in the U.S. it was called Black Hole High. But or rather, maybe it was the other way around. It might have been called Black Hole High here, and then Strange Days at Blake Holsley High everywhere. Black Hole High was considered the title was considered offensive by someone. You use your imagination. We were like, and I'm as perverted and disgusting as the next person. I'm like, I have no idea what is a black hole. Anyway, they were like, it's a term, so we had to change it. It was it's not because of legal reasons. The show was called Black Hole High. Way better title.
Yes.
Strange Days at Blake Holsley High is a huge mouthful. People are still reading the title of the show. They haven't seen it. But again, a great experience. Bruce was my boss. Bruce Kalish, same boss from Jett Jackson. And we had some fantastic actors who I would come across later and who were getting this wonderful training. They were working actors. They were learning how to be in front of a camera. And so by the time I got to them on later shows, they knew what they were doing, which is a huge advantage.
And I know
And
you
this
have
is
some, you had what would be opinions about some of them for casting in later shows, which we will get to. But yeah, there were Michael Cedar and Shadia Simmons were on this show.
yep.
And you're credited as writer, written by, and story by. Can you break down the differences between those three?
Yes, these are all boring Writers Guild terms, and in certainly in Canadian showbiz, you're not going to become super rich, but you can collect many titles. So if you write, let's put it this way, okay, if you write the whole script, it says written by. That's you. If you just wrote the story and you didn't write the lines, so you wrote the outline. Here's what's going to happen. Quinn and Jeff are going to talk on a podcast, and then they're going to go their separate ways. And we just described the action. You can get a story by credit. But then if I write the dialogue version of this, then you get story and teleplay. Then there's also story editor credits. So if let's say we have a bunch of writers on the show, ultimately on any TV series, whoever's name is on the script, it's rewritten by the showrunner and the story editor. Okay, so whoever wrote on Black Hole High, and I was a story editor, I would rewrite their work, and ultimately Bruce, who was the showrunner, would rewrite me. They're just different titles. So yes, if you write the whole script, it's written by. Teleplay is just if you write the dialogue, and story by is if you just write the words. Story editor is if you are editing
What other people wrote.
what other people are doing. And then they add executives to it because they don't want to pay you more. They just give you more titles. There's a very famous episode of Cheers where Woody wants a raise. They can't give him a raise, and they start giving him titles. Executive bartender in charge of. That's kind of what like showbiz is like. So you'll see. You ever watch a show? They're like, why are there so many producers? They're all writers. They're not producers. They're not looking at the budget. They're writing scripts, but they're getting better titles, sometimes in lieu of better paychecks. But it's good to be a producer. First of all, it looks impressive, right? I'm a producer. You get to call me producer. It's like I was doing the same job one year, and then on Life with Derek, I was executive story editor one year, and then the next episode, I was producer. And I other than my ego and attitude, nothing changed. So
Your resume must be like a scroll. You just open it and just drop it at the floor.
Quantity, not quality, Quinn. Remember that. That's the Canadian way.
That's hilarious. When I was going through just like your work, one that really piqued my interest.
Please refer please on my oeuvre. I think is what you meant. My en français, but yes, but thank you.
Exactly. One show that really caught my interest, which I didn't watch as a kid and hadn't even heard of, was Ace Lightning. And this was interesting because it kind of gave me a little bit vibes of the type of work that Naughty was with like the cartoon clay toys. And then on this one, it was live action. And then there were CGI video game characters in the real world. And it said that you had written on 6 episodes. And again, Shadia Simmons, and then you add Ashley Leggett in there as well. But yeah, I feel like that crossover between CGI and live action was like ahead of its time. No,
that was the first. The showrunner of that show was a guy named Rick Sigelko, and he was the showrunner of Naughty. So I knew Rick from there. I tried to become a writer on Naughty. Rick was like, he used to say "guy" a lot. He's like, "No, guy," and I'm like, "Really, guy?" Like, come on. Anyway, I was like, "That's a preschool." He wouldn't do it. I thought he was being a dick about it. I think he was just like, you're a kid. You wait your turn, and so I did. And so he was developing this hybrid, it was very ambitious. It was a co-production with, I think, BBC Kids. So it had a lot of, put it this way, they were building toys before the show was made, which is never a good sign, right? You're right. Don't put the cart before the horse. Don't put the Woody before the Toy Stories. I mean, maybe you do. I don't know. But it was very ambitious. Look, but for me, selfishly, as a writer who wanted to gain more experience in different, types of shows, writing for a production where literally they were filming things. So Shadia and Ashley would be talking to a sign where the CGI would go, and that will change the way you write. You can't have back and forth in the same kind of way. And the other reality is, this is Canadian television, and you say yes to everything, and you never know what's going to happen. And I think it was my first executive story editing credit. It was a great experience. I worked mostly from home. And they did 39 episodes back then, even if the show, and I'm not saying it was, even if it wasn't the most successful shows, they needed to make a certain amount of shows. It really, that kind of mentality and business model really helped me, not just financially, but just, you just need more kicks at it. You just have to learn about the characters. It's very hard today. I feel it's harder for writers. You don't know anything about a character until, I would say, sometimes, a season and a half. You watch The Simpsons; those characters change. Family Guy, they sound different. Even Life with Derek, there are these characters. They grow up. Like the characters, the actors start to own their own characters. So it's unfortunate nowadays. It's very difficult for shows to get that far along, where everyone's learning, right? It's like a relationship. Oh yeah, this is it's fun at the first. Oh my God, this is so exciting. We're in a relationship. But then when it gets real, all right, is this going to work? You sort of evolve together, and that's kind of like what a show, show can be. And the more successful shows, I don't think it's an accident. The show kind of has time to grow. Again, Ace Lightning. I don't think it was. I think the technology was very, very challenging. If you watch it now, it's there's a certain corny element to it, but like no one sets out to make a corny show. It just that's kind of what it was. But I would never have. Oh, I'm like Ashley Leggett. Who is this? She's really funny and knows how to turn a joke. And when I saw an audition tape, or when I was showed an audition tape, I wasn't making the casting decisions. I was like, you better cast her.
I love
Or
that.
at least I could understand why she would be one of the choices. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I would love to see, like, I know you said I would like looks kind of corny now, but for Ace Lightning, I would love to see like that, what they could do with that now with the technology 25 plus years later. Like that would be awesome to be able to see.
100%.
And then you worked on a show with an alumni of the Quinn Marr Show, which was on Being Ian. The creator was Ian James Corlett.
Oh wow!
So
Yes,
I love that show. That the big YTV show when I was a kid, and I know it was only 3 episodes, but what was that quick little experience?
No,
like?
I think I wrote 6 or 7.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to have my people correct that.
I know IMDb gets me all the time with incorrect info.
No, Ian, I haven't seen Ian's. Oh my God, he's like hugely talented. This guy's like a voice actor and a writer, and a show about his life. And like he was a Vancouver guy, and so like I met him a couple of times, but most of everything was done remotely. And it's basically a sitcom about a kid who wanted to be a filmmaker. I loved that show, and not everyone knows it, but it has a certain unique style, which I thought was really great. It was really funny. I'm a huge sports fan, and there was an episode we wrote that the guest star was supposed to be Todd Bertuzzi.
What?
Yeah. Yes, and I don't remember the storyline, but I wrote it because I was a big hockey fan, and I better write this one. I'm like, Ian, I love this, and I think he wanted to get an autograph. I can't remember the storyline, but anyway, the story was about Todd Bertuzzi. Okay, and then while we're writing this, Todd Bertuzzi cross-checks.
No, it was that exact time. No way.
Was it Brashear he cross-checked, or
Moore?
Oh yeah, yes, yes, Moore. Yes, it was.
Head. Oh my God, no way.
Scott Moore. So we had to rewrite. We panicked. I was like, this is not going to work without time. We rewrote it for Trevor Linden, I believe, is who it ended up being. Who was not controversial, but it was like, this was exciting. This is like, we had to, in animation, you write so far ahead that, you often, this doesn't really, these sort of real world stories happening don't really affect it. And this kind of directly affected it. But yeah, so that was funny. And I loved that was honestly, I love half-hour comedies. And that was one of the shows that was really just a half-hour comedy. That's all it was. And it was great and charming. And again, Ian is like, if you have a funny voice and you're smart, you can be like, he never stops working. This guy, it's freaking.
It's funny because he was the guy that did like the Family Channel bumper voice. Yep. So when he came on the show, he did it, and this was a couple years ago, and I remember being so starstruck. He made a version of saying the Quinn Marr Show in that voice, and like I was like, this is the coolest thing in the world.
That's right. Imagine having actual talent, Quinn. It would be something.
Yeah, right. As if you don't.
No.
That's a cool thing about like that time with like those cartoons. Like it's like Being Ian, sticking around, Angela Anaconda a little bit before that, but it's like that like oddish cartoon.
Yes, there was a
vibe.
style. It was a certain,
Yeah.
just it's like I can't describe it. There was,
No.
there's a 7-Up ad around at the time, and they all these that commercial, that sort of style of animation with these skinny heads and the shaky, and then Angela, all these had very distinct styles. Yes, and now everything kind of looks like Paw Patrol, which is fine. Paw
That's
Patrol's a
so
huge hit.
true. That is so true. My nephew, a couple years ago, when he was like 3 or 4, 5-ish, obsessed with that show. And like,
Yeah.
you really do see, I mean, I'm sure my parents said the same thing, but you really do see a big, massive difference of kid shows now versus even when I was a kid 15, 20 years ago type thing.
It's very hard. Listen. I think what's happening now with preschool is that everything is aged up. So, like a Paw Patrol show, like there are sophisticated jokes now in Paw Patrol. Like everything is aged up, which kids are smarter. I get that. But there is very the innocence lost kind of thing. It's very tough. I think that's partly why there's not as many teen shows like Life with Derek, like Overruled, like Hannah Montana. All these shows, it's kids are watching up. They're watching older, and so that's sort of tween period. It's very narrow where I have kids, and it's like I don't think my daughter would watch Life with Derek in the same way that a 15-year-old did back then, which sucks, but that's you can't fight it. That's just change, and as I said, it'll come back. It'll just be something different. I hope.
Like, I feel like if I showed my nephew now, he's 7. If I showed him like Ned's Newt or like Monster by Mistake, like he'd probably be like, "What is this? Can we put it on YouTube?" Like, you know what I mean? Like,
That's the truth. And again, I
yeah.
think they'll end up making like 1-minute versions of these kinds of shows and they'll be like, oh, this is great. I would watch a minute of this. And then eventually like, oh, what if I watch 30 minutes of this? Like, yes, that's exact. So they'll take these 1-minute vertical series and make them into
You need to fix the
again.
attention span. And this is coming from someone with attention span of a gnat already.
Hey, listen,
and then TikTok came out and it got that much worse. But like, yeah, we need to bring it back the other way. Like you were just saying.
We've only looked at our phone twice during this, Quinn. I'm very impressed with both of us.
There you go.
No,
Exactly.
it's me. It's only you haven't flinched. It's just me.
I was gonna say I haven't been on my phone.
No, you've been good. You've been good.
So I mean, when I think of Family Channel and like an actual Family Channel show, my first one I think of is Live with Derek. Obviously, there was the filter between Disney Channel shows coming onto the channel, but when I think Family Channel, I think Live with Derek. So, your roles, we go back to the role thing: producer, executive, story editor, and then writer. So this obviously featured Michael Cedar, Shadia Simmons, and then Ashley Leggett. And you had told a story, and I'm going to go back to that 20th anniversary live stream you were on, about Michael Cedar casting as Derek Venturi. Can you tell that story?
Well, yes. So the show was created by Daphne Ballin. So she was the showrunner, and I was brought in early on before I wrote like one of the first development scripts. So it was me and Daphne working together with a company called Shaftesbury. And a producer named Suzanne French. And so they were great producers and very generous and like brought me into the process really early on. And so, as a development writer, you're not part of the casting unless you're producing. I wasn't producing at the time. It's just this young, arrogant writer who thought he knew everything because I had met Beyonce. So I thought I knew everything. So they showed me some of the tapes and the people they were considering. And they showed me a list of names and I'm like, okay, they always like this. I'm like, oh yeah, no, Kate Todd I'd worked on my friend Brent Piaskowski, who ran Radio Free Roscoe. I'm like, oh no, she's amazing. That show's fantastic. That's like, you got to get her. Ashley Leggett, I'm like, oh, I worked with her on Ace Lightning. I mean, I don't know, but she's pretty good. She'd be great. I think she'd be good. And then, but Michael Cedar for Derek. No, this character's got to be cool. And Michael this is a nerdy kid, and he's got his glasses. He's just like, but you have Noah Reed. The guy it's so obvious. He is Derek. And I was writing the development scripts. I had Noah Reed in my head like the whole time. And I'm like, they're like, no, we're going with Michael. And I'm like, all right, don't listen to me. And I remember telling people, I'm like, the show's going nowhere. They don't know what they're doing. They're not listening to me. So I had and again, Michael, he was probably 14, 15 at the time. He changed and he was an actor, and I didn't quite realize that you could transform your look. And he grew his hair and he put on a leather jacket, and thank God nobody listened to me, because I mean, I could have written those scripts till I was blue in the face without Michael Cedar, without Ashley Leggett. And then you had Jordan Todesey, Ariel Waller, Daniel, all these all these actors around them. And then of course, even the grown-ups, Joy Tanner and George, what the hell's his name? Who's
John.
going to kill me? Thank you, John Ralston, the wonderful John Ralston. Sorry, John, I'm old. But Michael and Ashley, I mean, they're the reason why the show lasted. The writing didn't get in the way, but it was them. It was their, you could call it chemistry. You could call it sexual chemistry, which we did not think of at the time. That's a whole other, that's an audience's, projecting. I don't know. We didn't think of that. We were, as I said, I'm as disgusting and gross as the next person. It was the last thing on our minds. So I had no idea that was going to become a thing. But I think, again, teenagers, you're bound to have that kind of talk regardless. That was never a thing while we were making the show. Maybe it was to them. I don't know. But they were just the perfect for the role. They were the characters. That was them. And they had experience. It wasn't just, it wasn't just they responded to the roles and that they saw something. No, they were industry veterans by the time they were on Life with Derek. So this is why you need a healthy Canadian teen television industry and system. So that when a show like Life with Derek comes along, and it's written by someone like me and someone like Daphne, who really takes this stuff very seriously and appreciates the genre, it has a chance to thrive. Because if it doesn't, then there aren't these other shows that get made because of this. And admittedly, if there wasn't a Degrassi, we wouldn't have existed, because Degrassi proved that Canadian shows can be successful. And as much as it was great when Overruled won Best Comedy or Best Youth Series and we beat Degrassi, I don't know. I think people were just tired of voting for Degrassi, and they just saw this thing, and I don't know. We got lucky. It was kind of funny at the time, but we wouldn't have been there without them. They created an industry. There were directors who directed it. There were writers who wrote it, and there was a pool of actors who were auditioning for this stuff. And so we could pick and choose and be like, oh, this guy would be great. It was great. It was like our little Hollywood North in this little pool of actors, and we would like pick and choose, and we'd like, oh, we want Shane Kipple to play, Derek's friend on Life. And he was like, this kid was amazing. Came in, he was freaking hilarious. Right?
You guys had there were so many Degrassi actors that were on Life with Derek. It was crazy. Like, obviously, I rewatch the show sometimes. It's like this episode, then the two episodes next, there's another one, and it just keeps going. But I also noticed growing up and also doing this podcast is that there's a lot of crossover between either voice actors that are Canadian, actors that in general are Canadian, like lots of crossover. And Life with Derek was just another example.
There aren't that many companies. There aren't that many, and now there's even fewer. But we're all working from the same. We'll put it this way: in Canada, there aren't that many agents. Same actors are up for the same shows, and also, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you get someone who's more? It's like it's on American shows. That was always the way. You're like, oh, that guy was on that show, and then people love that kind of stuff. So yes, that's the celebrity of someone else. It absolutely helped. It absolutely helped the show. There's no question that we had Degrassi fans tune in, because Lauren Collins was on Life. But that was, I took that for granted at the time, that people would care to watch these, that there was so many Canadians were watching the show. And again, it's years later, I teach at TMU, and I teach at Seneca, and like a lot of people who are sort of grew up watching these shows, and it feels fucking great. It's I'm not jaded about, as sarcastic as I can be. I think it's wonderful, and I do hope that the 20-something Jeff that's coming up now, has that same chance, because I think it's teen comedy's the best, man. There's a certain innocence to it, and then there can be a certain Casey and it's right? It's just floating, and I think it's a great sort of time. Emerging adulthood, right? It's great.
I had Danny on a couple years ago, and we've hung out at least one time since. And he brought that up on his own during that episode, the first episode he was on, about everyone thinks that Derek and Casey wanted to have sex with each other, and he didn't know where that came from either.
It's funny. The only, I'm rarely precious about like lines and dialogue, and I'm always like, oh, okay, you want to change that? I could rewrite it. Something else will come up. But it was very important to me that the theme of Life with Derek is that blended families are just regular families, right? In the end, Casey and Derek were brother. As much as they were step siblings, they were really treating each other like siblings. There was a line at the last episode. It's like, you're the most annoying brother, and she's like, stepbrother, and I'm like, yeah, right. So and I was like, yeah, that's the line. That's what you. And then like you look at the show, and then it's like the mood lighting, and it looks romantic. And I'm like, well, this is why as a writer you need to be on set all the time. And I do not think the director, who I know is a great guy, I don't think he thought that. No one was really thinking that. And I'm just like, no, the idea was supposed to be like, you're my fucking most annoying brother. I hate your fucking guts. And it's like, and it became this romantic moment. So again, listen. If I could do it all over again, I don't know. We ended up they made a movie out of it, and another movie. Do I want to exploit this disgusting aspect of the show for financial gain? Yes, I do. Because I have kids and they keep eating. So I don't know. You don't know where the audience's mind's going to go. That was not the intention of the writer. And it was a moral of the story. Once again, same thing with casting. Don't listen to Jeff. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And when you insist on a line being in a show, shut the hell up, because you never know. It could be this really weird.
It also didn't help the way Michael delivered it, I think, too.
It's his fault. I'm blaming him. I'm blaming him. No, you can't. I mean, again, yes, maybe. But, and also, it just, again, if someone had said to me, hey, people online are saying this about these kids, I would have been more cautious. I don't know. I don't know. Like,
no one was saying it back then. At least I know I didn't hear of it then. You weren't seeing stuff online the way you do now. So I think it's been like so long since the show ended, obviously the movie and then the other movie. Now people bring it up, but people weren't saying anything about it then.
Well, I pitched a show, like a real life show to Michael, like a sort of a fictional version of his real life, where he has to move in with, where he's like a down on his luck actor who has to move in with Ashley Leggett and his family and sleep on her couch, right? And he was like, no, I don't want to do that. But I understand. But I'm like, well, let's just, let's. I think that'd be funny and all this. And then we did a reboot, which never got made, a primetime version of Life with Derek with CTV. We wrote scripts for the show, and the first scene that we wrote about was and it took place when Casey and Derek were in their 20s, so it was like maybe 5 or 6 years after the original series ended. And in the first scene, Casey comes back home, and she's sleeping in the basement, because that's where the guest room is now. And little does she know, Derek has been sneaking in, and he's, after traveling Europe, has moved back home without telling anybody. And so they end up in bed together in the first scene of the show, unwittingly. I just wanted to, like, if we're going to make the show, let's just do it head on, and hang a lantern on the note, as they say, shine a light on this ick thing that people have, and then just address it and move on. So that's how we did. And the show never got made, but we were going to address those issues. And then we made a reboot with the movie, and we didn't address any of those issues, which
Where all like was the cast, like, did it get to as far as like the cast were all in on the show?
We did a table read. Everyone was in. I think at the time, CTV, which was our broadcaster, it was a Modern Family style show. Like, wasn't a mockumentary, but it was a Modern Family tone of a show, I would say. And they just didn't have a place, they said, to put it on the air. I don't know. I don't know how much of an audience it would have had, but it was fun writing those scripts and developing a sort of a more Casey and Derek drinking, it was kind of fun. And maybe it would have betrayed the characters. Maybe it's not something you want to see. Do you want to see, little Marty being promiscuous? I don't know. Do you?
What was it? Did you have an actual a finalized title for it, or no?
It was Life with Derek again.
Oh, okay. Hey, that's simple.
I know.
I like it.
If anyone wants to make it, by the time we'll make it looks like Casey and Derek are grandparents, and they're.
Please, I love it. I love Live with Derek.
Yeah,
I like it. I'll talk me and Danny. He invited me out to come watch one of the Leafs playoff games when they're playing Ottawa. So we were at a bar in Toronto watching the game, and I didn't because I didn't want to ask him about the show, but there were times I'm like, I kind of want to talk about it with him when we're hanging out. But
I love Danny, and I'm sure to this day, as you know, you could ask him anything. He would love to talk about it.
He's the best. He was talking.
And he's a writer. He's a writer himself now, very talented. I just read something he wrote, and I owe him a phone call. But yes, he's a talented young man.
He was telling me that actually Radio Free Roscoe was one of his favorite TV shows growing up.
Mine too.
Yeah.
It's a great show.
I
I
love
love
it.
writing on that show.
The last couple of things on Life with Derek was it became the longest running scripted live action series ever produced for Family Channel Canada, and then obviously one of the few Canadian shows to air widely on Disney Channel US. In your mind, what do you think made it so popular and able to have the run it did? Because 70 episodes, that wasn't normal for that type of show.
Honestly, I think it was cliche. It's lightning in a bottle. I just think it's like the Brady Bunch before your time, but it was multi-generational, meaning little kids could look up to the little kids could watch the older teens and aspire to them, but they could relate to the younger kids. So it had different ages, right? 3 generations of kids: little kid, middle kid, older kids. Every kid had someone to relate to, and it was a family. And the stories were they were all sort of sitcom-y type stories, the bully story and the not getting good grades and cheating on a test. We weren't really, I'm not saying we broke ground in the storylines, but it was written by 2 people who I certainly give Daphne a lot of credit, which is like, we really cared about the characters, we're very protective about them, and we had a chance. We had a lot of runway. We had a lot of episodes to deal with. And I think the reason is, I would say it goes back to full circle. I knew every sitcom trope. I watched every single show. I knew how it was supposed to look and how it was supposed to sound. So I wasn't struggling to find the patterns, and I was able to focus on writing dialogue that mattered. And as the kids grew into their own voices, it just kind of matched. It was a relationship, and it got better and easier, and it felt less like work and more like, this is supposed to happen. So, and that doesn't happen with many shows. And honestly, it was the cast. People liked watching those characters. Just something about that family, which felt real enough. Not the same kind of grounded in reality that a lot of shows are now, where it's hyper, so like, this is ripped from headlines. It was more like, this was TV, but there was something Canadian about it. It didn't have a laugh track. It wasn't a multicam. It had I would argue, I found the sound effects very annoying.
I loved those. They were like, those kind of reminded me
People loved
like,
them. Yes.
Being like kind of like Hannah Montana with the transitions, where she was going like, ooh, ah, ooh, or like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like type thing. Like to go
it
from
had
one thing to another was different.
It was psychological. Every episode the characters felt familiar, and the sound of the show felt familiar. Those stings and those sound and the theme song. It was a very well packaged show by a very smart company. So it had all the ingredients. I wish I could say it was just the writing. It was not. I wish I could say it was just, the story. It was not. It was an important ingredient. And we, also, we got a lot of trust from the broadcasters. We didn't get a lot of notes. Like, there's some jokes in there we were able to sneak in that, ooh, did they really say that? That kind of stuff. We were able to do that. And then we got so many episodes because just the audience, it's a whole synergy that it just, I don't know, it just kind of lucked out. The charm of the Canadianness, with the mixed in with a little bit of an American style, it just kind of works. Someone's going to come to my door. But anyway, so yeah.
Hope he's not a burglar. I hope not.
I hope no, drop something off. But yes, does that sound intellectual enough, Quinn? But also just not a complicated concept. I remember thinking it could go on forever. Why are we stopping? And then it's like, well, because you pitched the show called Overruled. They seem to want to make that. I'm like, okay, that's a good reason. We can.
I like that you mentioned that though, because it was funny that I was, when I was searching it up, like just about info about Overruled, like the behind the scenes stuff, it was written by the Jeffs. 3 Jeffs wrote this show.
3
so
Jeffs.
How does that happen? Just by coincidence.
3 Jeffs. 3 Jeffs. So Jeff Schechter was a writer. He'd written a lot of screenplays. He wrote one of the Beethoven movies, and we were friends. We shared an agent, and we were always coming up with other ideas for shows. He read an article about like teen courts in high schools, and we were like, what if we pitch a show about like night court for kids? We neither of us had run a show before, so we brought in an experienced producer named Jeff King. So it was 3 Jeffs. And we pitched the same production company that was making Life with Derek. and they liked the idea. And then the head of Shaftesbury, Christina Jennings, walked into Family Channel and said, "This is your next show." And based on the credibility of Life with Derek, they said yes. I don't think it was they liked the idea enough, but they more liked the company and they trusted us. And it was, I mean, again, it was my first show I'd ever show run. I learned a ton. We were lucky to have also some great actors, Jacob Kramer, who had done a lot of stuff before, and then some newer talent. And it was a kind of a family show and a school show, much like Life with Derek. We shot a demo on the Life with Derek sets. We just kind of redressed them. And I'm sure at the time, a lot of the actors were like, "What the hell is this guy doing? We're working on this show." But, that's kind of showbiz. We ended up making 39 episodes, which was wonderful. Got to work with Jasmine Richards, who was from Camp Rock, and she was amazing. Shamir Anderson, one of his first jobs as an actor, was on that show. And just we were able to write sort of more high schooly storylines and romantic storylines. It was a different kind of show, much more. It probably should have been a multi-camera sitcom, but Canada did not make those with the laugh track and a live studio audience, which I ended up making one for a primetime show called Spun Out, in front of a studio audience. A very different style of show. Super fun. I recommend it highly. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. I loved Overruled, and I remember finding it interesting. And it's now funny to look back that it just worked. Like a teen show about court somehow was interesting. And I know that sounds silly, but for someone like me, I wouldn't have if you just told me that, I wouldn't be like, "Oh yeah, I want to watch that." But I enjoyed it.
It would be a very tough sell today. And I will tell you a little behind the scenes story. So that show was picked up by Family Channel, and then much like Life with Derek, we were going to have Disney Channel involved as well. And so at the beginning of the show, they gave us a bunch of notes. And notes, for your listeners, is like feedback, like grades. And what they said was, and the show was about a smooth-talking lawyer who talks his way out of trouble. And what they said was, Disney was like, yeah, no kid wants to be a lawyer. They want to be the judge, which makes so much more sense. And we had this great character, Jasmine Richards. She just come from Camp Rock. She should be the star of the show. The problem is, it was a Canadian show. We had already built the sets, and we already cast the main character, Jacob Kramer, Coop. We already cast his family. I don't think anyone's ever heard this story out loud. So the show was about Jacob. It was about Jared Coop Cooper and his family. Sarah Waysglass was his little sister. She's now on Ginny in Georgia. One of her first jobs. Great little actor. But we'd cast their family, and we'd built the sets for their family. And so we couldn't and we've got these notes maybe a week before we were going to film the show. And so we had a come to Jesus moment. It's like, well, what do we do? Do we rewrite the show now? And basically the production company, Shaftesbury, said, no, we can't afford to do that. We're not going to do that. We're going to make this show. We're going to do the best we can. And that's what we did. And again, there were arguments, I'm not saying that it would have been a huge hit, but it was a situation where the writers, us on the show, we were like, yeah, being a lawyer, you're more assertive, it's more active, all these reasons why it made more sense. And then we overthought it. It was like, yeah, kids want to be the judge. You want to decide what time you go to bed. You want to decide everything. Oh my God, it's so obvious. So it would have been a much different show, and not a sexy concept. No, kids in court. No, that is boring as hell. Our kids are not litigious. It was not. So it became much less about the court cases and much more about a group of kids. That's just kind of what it became. But it was I learned a ton. It was a great cast, really, really nice kids. And hopefully they got something more than just a paycheck out. It got some experience. And I certainly did as a showrunner, learned a ton. Ended up working with Matt Schiller, who's now who you should interview, a very prolific teen writer who won Showrunner of the Year. So again, it developed skills for other writers, other directors. We made 40 episodes and won awards. I wouldn't consider it a failure, but I was like, all shows are going to be like Life with Derek. All shows are going to go 70, and it's just that's the exception, not the Overruled.
And again, I thoroughly enjoyed that show. Going fast forwarding to 2023, Life with Luca. So it just so happened that this movie had come out like right at the almost exact time that I started this podcast. I'd done many podcasts before, but like this one, there's a nostalgic one, and it just so happened that I had Danny on. So obviously, Life with Luca is a movie based on Life with Derek and I guess Vacation with Derek as well. You're an executive producer on that, so
yes.
I know you
I'm
guys
listening.
you talked about that CTV reboot spinoff type show that you guys were trying to work on that didn't work. So then you guys scrapped that idea for however many years, and then this idea for the movie comes out or comes to fruition.
Yes. So we had done during COVID. We were trying to reboot a series version of Life. It was going to be Life with Luca, and it was going to be a TV series. I think we wrote a script and developed a couple of episodes. But I think because of COVID, to make new content was to get a series made was very, very difficult. And so instead they decided, well, let's make a movie instead. And then if the movie does well, we'll make a series out of that. And I just think, and again, a wonderful experience to go back to those characters and to cast a new generation of characters. I just think it was a very difficult, put it this way, it was a very difficult time. COVID was going on, and kids' content just wasn't the same appetite for it as well. And Family Channel, who really were very supportive of it, we didn't know what was going on business-wise behind the scenes. That, like, who knows what would have happened had Family Channel continued? Would that have been a series? I'm glad we got a chance to make it. It was great to see, Ashley and Michael together as adults. There were many things I would do, not just about the movie, but about, what I would do with the new series now. I would 100% integrate the entire family, the old generation. We didn't have the budget. This was a Canadian movie. Put it this way, the budget for that movie was probably the same as the budget for one episode of the Famous Jett Jackson 25 years earlier.
Wow.
The producers of Life with Luca did a great job making that look more expensive than it was. It was a very low budget, very challenging movie. Casting the there a time. And so there were certain actors we wanted to cast who were like, no, we can't commit to this show for 5 years. So it's very challenging. This is like behind the scenes, nobody cares. So we got a great cast in the end that we were happy with, but we were making decisions that were not just like, okay, what's the best thing that's going to make the best movie? We were like, how do we make this thing? And how do we get this show made? So I think it was very, very challenging, and things that we would do differently. I think we would all agree. On the other hand, it was, again, is it Life with Derek if it's not the whole family? I don't think so. So I hope there is another chance to bring this whole family back together. And not just as a one-off, maybe an ongoing thing, maybe making something completely different. I think every couple of years or so, the good thing about having a show like that did go for so long, it's one of those shows that different generations. So it's like there's your generation that likes it. And then hopefully 10 years later, there'll be another generation of kids that are able to find the show and bring it back to life again. Because, there's just something about Casey and Derek. People like those characters. And I know Danny would do it in a second, and I know that a lot of those cast members felt like, well, why aren't we in the show? And it's like, yeah, it's like I'm lucky to be on the show. So I would be bitter. I get it. I wouldn't be happy about it.
Yeah. So you mentioned that. So obviously the absence of Edwin, Lizzie, and Marty. And I'll be honest, I've been vocal on this show. When I had Danny on, Jordy was on as well. I've been vocal that I was not a fan of that. I watched Life with Luca. Did I enjoy it? Absolutely. As a almost 30-year-old. But yeah, there was something missing, and it was those three. And like Danny had said, and this was 40 plus episodes ago of my show, is that like no one said anything to him. And I think that was like the biggest thing for him, at least. And I don't want to put words in his mouth. Anyone can go back and watch it. But yeah, he just said like what it was is that like he heard about the thing through the grapevine and like no one said, hey, we're doing this, but sorry, you're not on it.
Yeah. And by the way, up until like pretty close to, like they were supposed to be on it. Like we had written them into it. Like, so this is, and again, like it's just money. It's not, there's nothing else as personal. Yes, it probably should have been handled differently to speak to the actors. But they were supposed to be on it until it was like, we cannot, you could either have them on this last scene of the movie or you don't have the movie. You're like, oh okay, we better just like, so, and I think it was not, they were always supposed to be part of it. And so we were kind of just like, oh, well, we'll tell them when we know that they're going to be on it. And then they weren't on it. And it's like, yes, I was surprised to hear that no one reached out, but that's
yeah. And like the other thing that like bugged me when I watched it was like the other kid was in it, like the one that they had later on. I was like, oh really? He's in it? And nothing against him, the actor or anything. It was just like, really?
I know.
And I know that's not you making those decisions, but I was just like, that sucks.
It was not. It's not. Yes, I would not be happy either. I get it. That's why I think I suspect this isn't the last time we will see those characters, and wrongs will be righted.
I hope so. And then the good thing that came out of this movie was, and those not being in it, was Danny and Jordy making that quick skit and reprising their roles themselves, and that was unreal. And then Ariel comes in at the end, and that's where the whole sound effect things comes in. Like Danny did it perfectly with the editing.
Which, by the way, did we not? I think we wanted to use. I don't know if Family Channel ended up using it to. I was like, I think we wanted to actually. I don't know what ended up happening. Maybe this a couple of years ago, where we're like, oh, let's buy that. Let's pay them for that, and let's bring them into the like. This was brilliant. Like it was like. I just don't think. Again, it became about money, and then it became about this Family Channel's about to close down. So it's kind of like you would like to think that people take the time, and most of the time they do. It's like we're human beings, and we should reach out. And I think this was one of those times where it's like it is show business, and this was literally like, oh, we forgot to tell the actors while Rome is burning. Like that's kind of what was going.
Yeah,
it sucks.
And looking at that now, like 2 years ago when I first had Danny on, obviously none of us knew that was happening. So that does give a little bit of like light to the situation. But
yeah,
it was funny because Jordy literally flew out to Vancouver to film this with him. They had all like the random games. They did it in a closet. Like everything about it was perfect.
It was brilliant. And again, like this, there were versions of the movie where it ended with them all coming back. There was versions of the movie where they were in multiple scenes. It was written for them to be a big part of this. Part of the problem with having the other reason, it's hard to have a show that big. There's a reason why you don't see shows that big anymore. It's expensive.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, consolidation. So it's, and yes, and
now this may be a dumb question. You may not know the answer to it, but like if it was to like try to get made now, how does that work with Family Channel no longer existing?
It's they don't own it. The rights are owned by the creators of the show and probably the production company Shaftesbury.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it can be made. It absolutely could be made again. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Don't you worry. If there's money to be made, someone will squeeze.
Please get in Daphne's ear, and whoever needs to hear it, please make Life with Derek with everybody, please. Now the last couple of things I got for you, I know I've taken a lot of your time. I just wanted to quickly get into like your current work. You're an instructor, you're a professor, you're a co-creator, co-showrunner. If you quickly want to go through that, because you're a busy guy. It doesn't seem like you relax very much.
Apparently I'm an actor too, if that's how it comes across. No, I relax. So yeah, no, I teach writing at Seneca, and I teach and production because I have a lot of experience in that. I teach that at TMU, and when I'm not doing that, I am currently making this weird hybrid comedy series. Nowadays, it's very difficult to get bigger budget shows I develop those shows all the time, but it's very hard to get those made. So I have this very strange comedy, kind of in the vein of Nathan Fielder, where it's a show is called current show I'm making is called A State of Mind, and it's about a guy who loses everything. Comedy about a guy who loses everything and he rebuilds his life by going to estate sales and picking up these items and rebuilding his life that way. And the twist on the show is that he's a real actor that we script and we write stories, much like Curb Your Enthusiasm, but he's interacting and telling his story and among real people.
Oh.
So if you're ever in a estate sale in Ontario and you see cameras there and you see an actor trying to be funny, that is what's happening. And we filmed 3 episodes, and that'll air on Bell 5, which is sort of a local channel here. And if it takes off, we'll hopefully kind of like a bigger budget kind of hybrid weird comedy series. And I run writing workshops and still developing teen shows and animation and yeah, trying to teach the new generation and trying to encourage people to write half-hour comedy. And there's still a lot of content out there, but I think it's the long form shows that really do stick. I think that's
absolutely. I'm 1000% with you on that. My one Jay's question for you. I don't know when this episode is going to come out, but it's December 10th. Bo Bichette is not with the team right now. Kyle Tucker is not with the team. Where do those two end up? And is it the Jays?
Well, coming off the signing I just heard today, where Schwarber to the Phillies. And
Alonso to the Orioles.
Alonso to the Orioles. I wonder if Tucker ends up going to the Mets, even though they don't really. I know they have their outfield's kind of crowded, but they need to make a big splash. I actually think the Jays will land Tucker
And Bo.
I don't think Bo.
It's tough because what Tucker. What Bo is. So it's like, do you lose that and then not take a chance on Tucker? Duh, he's the guy he is. But it's like, do you ruin a good thing? The grass isn't always greener. Again, I know I'm saying this about someone like Tucker, but still.
Look, it's a win-win proposition. I think the Jays did very well without Bo, and you know what he is, and trust me, having him at second base and Jimenez at short would be wonderful. But Tucker is a power bat who has played in the American League, who and could really slide into when Springer retires. I think it's a great fit, and I don't get the sense that. Let's put it this way: had the Jays not made the World Series, I think Bo would be gone for sure. And I think so. I'm fascinated. It'll be very, very interesting. And the fans will be crushed if they don't get one of them, I think.
Oh, 100%. And it's nice that you need to get to where they got for people to want to be here. Like Dylan Cease, right? He told Scott Boras, his agent, you got to make a deal with them for me. I want to be there. It takes going to the World Series to do so, but hey, it's baseball in Canada that not a lot of people want to come here.
And just to bring it full circle and to close, which would be the moment I knew, and I'd never experienced this because I worked on the Jett Jackson, and no one in Canada really knew that show. In America, they did a bit. I went. This was probably after season 1. I went with Danny Magder to a baseball game. He might have been 14, 15. He was just a little chubby little kid. And actually, he's pretty cute. Probably he might have fully gone through puberty. And we're walking along Front Street to get to the Dome, and people are like, "Edwin," and they recognized him. And I was like, "Holy shit! This has never happened on any Canadian show I'd ever heard of for me." And I was like, "There's something different about this show." And I knew, first of all, I also knew, Danny's ego was never going to deflate, and it has not 25 years later or 20 years later. But I knew that once they're seeing you in public and once they're recognizing, that is not Canadian celebrity. That's just plain old celebrity, which again, that's not always the goal, but that you've hit a nerve with an audience and you've connected with an audience. Because think about it, you mentioned a lot of teen shows. Some of them I've written for, and we could argue it's all subjective, quality, quantity, which is better, which is worse. That's the audience decides what they respond to, and it doesn't happen, right? And then you watch these shows like Schitt's Creek, and you're like, yes, I like to think I like to think, because I have an ego, that some of the shows I wrote, with Noah Reed and all the training that he was able to get because those shows existed. And then he was able to walk onto the films, and he's a star. Like he's a star, right?
The original voice of Franklin, which is always a mind bend for me.
Yeah,
Sorry, Jeff. Absolute last thing. I swear, I ask every guest at the end of my show. What is the one thing you miss most about being a kid?
Oh wow, the thing I miss most about being a kid. I'm going to need 2 hours to think about that. Well, the answer is I don't feel any different than I was when I was a kid. I'm living in many ways. I feel like an imposter in my own house. I have my own kids. I don't feel any different than than I was when I was a kid. So I don't miss anything. One thing I will say I do miss about that era, I miss waking up that Saturday morning feeling and turning on the television and watching these weird Canadian animated series at the time, because that was kid of the 70s. I miss that feeling of Saturday morning as a kid. I do miss that feeling. You get it a bit now, but it's not exactly the same.
No, that's perfect. Jeff, man, thank you so much for this. Almost an hour and a half of me annoying you with these questions. So
you better edit this down to a tight 20, Quinn. I've laughed way too long. This has got to be like, if this is an hour and a half, your show's gonna get canceled. I can't.
No way. This is unbelievable. Like talk about Canadian kids TV. Like you're like the guy for that. So no, man, thank you so much. This was amazing.
A pleasure. Good luck with the show. Really nice to talk to you. And don't be a stranger. If you have ever have any other questions,
I appreciate it. When Life with Derek makes its return, I'll have to get you on again.
Life with Derek again? No.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'll talk to you.
And that was the Quinn Marr Show.